record some more tutorial footage for you since we weren't able to cover everything I wanted to cover in the last class. What I have here in my sequence is my sequencer scene of the garden level where the camera is just panning across the garden, and I really want to select this scene as the one scene that I'm really going to ramp up and improve. I tried to show you the actual final results, but the computers and the Zoom recording and all of that just wasn't able to convey the finishing touches as well as I would have liked for you to have seen. I think your results will be much better on your individual workstations while you're working on your own projects. But to give you an idea, this is the final scene. I'm just gonna hit G here to go into game mode and hide all of these game assets. And so what we're adding here is the weather using the ultra dynamic sky. We're adding foliage, little bits of foliage in the planters, and in between like the cracks of the concrete tiled floor. We're adding the little bits of green in between, just to like give it some variation so it doesn't look like a tiled material. And we're using Easy Mapper to Vertex paint the moss layer and just painting in between the tile. We're adding what's also, I didn't go over in class, but what's also a part of Easy Mapper, which is a puddle layer where I can just bring in water, a layer of water, and have it be as high or as low as I want relative to my mesh. So if we select on this concrete tile layer, I'm going to open up my Easy Mapper. And if we go to the puddle layer here, I can go to the puddle layer blend attributes, and I can like slide this up and down to increase the amount of puddles, right? So we see more puddles and we see fewer puddles. And so we can really control, how wet this pavement starts to look. And so depending on how much rain I have, I may want to add more greater or fewer puddles. Everything else in here is pretty much a Megascans asset. So like this table was from my model, but I just found a concrete texture that looked pretty close to my reference images. All of these elements, so if I hit G again to go into game mode, you can see these are just decals. So if I move the decal out, you can see that it's just the plain white the plain white material that the model came with. I didn't even change the material really. And then using some of the various dynamic, what is it called? The dynamic sky, the ultra dynamic sky rain asset, you can add like a drip line if you wanted to emphasize water coming off of a specific surface. Obviously the rain is coming from ultra dynamic sky. If I scroll down here and get close to the floor, you can see the water is actually splashing off of the concrete surface. If I add a collider to my to anything that the rain is going to interact with, then the particle system that works with ultradynamic sky will simulate the actual bouncing of the water off of these surfaces. And I did the same thing for this table, and I actually did the same thing for this wine bottle. And I don't know if we're going to see any puddles bouncing off of the wine bottles, but you get the idea, right? And then I added some more entourage, like this chair that's overturned. I'm not sure if I like it or not. So I'm going to go over how I did each and every one of those things. Going back to my pre-modified level, right? So I just copied this level and just worked it, right? And then got what I would say is a nicer result. Again, we're going to go through references and really utilize our references in our sketches to figure out when enough is enough, right? Because you can really go um, deep with all of these modifications, and so it's really helpful to give yourself um, like a target to hit and then stop there, because you don't need to make it. You only need to go far enough to make for a convincing scene. You don't have to try to completely represent reality, right? So here's the garden sequence, the panning garden shot before I apply these changes, right? And so we can see I have stand-ins for like the wine glass and things like that, but I really want to capture the reflections off the glass, but also give it like that dark mood with the rain and everything. And then if I turn off this top layer, we can see what the final results look like with the rain and with the reflections and things. And I might want to even tweak things a little bit after going through this step, because I'm going to be doing it to show you anyway, so I might as well make a few additional improvements that might make the scene even more convincing. There's no reflection on this surface now, so I'm going to bounce some reflections off of that. If I hit stop for a moment, we can see that I moved the trees in the background to come closer, and I added some Quixel assets here, like this fallen tree branch and this, like, I don't even know what this is, but it just looks a little bit more realistic. And I painted the my landscape dirt underneath the trees, which is a little bit more realistic. I brought the trees closer so that we're framing the picnic blanket, and obviously I should change this picnic blanket. But I don't know if I'm gonna bother to do that. I also might change the trees here a little bit and add like a little bit more color. And I'll show you how I do that. And remember, I'm just using the procedural foliage actor to place these trees, so it's fairly easy to just add a tree and then procedurally generate the trees. Going over, you can see all of the water coming off of that drip line, which adds like a nice little touch. And then I have replaced my cylinders with actual wine bottles and plates, all of which I found from the marketplace or Megascans. The foliage here, this grass is just way too big, so I'm gonna probably be a little bit more subtle with it. And I might even try using a denser mesh so that my grass layer starts to fill in much more closer to the actual seam lines of my tile. But that's not a high priority thing, so I might not even get to that. I think it looks convincing enough at this point. And like I said, I want to improve the reflections on these surfaces so that I'm getting reflections of reflections that we'll start to see on this side, and I'll show you how that looks as well. Okay, so this is our target now, and we'll make a few modifications here and there. But I'm going to show you step by step how I got to this point. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save on this, or just close it. You might ask me to save. Okay, so let's save that out. I'm going to close After Effects because I don't need to slow down my computer any more than it already probably is. All right, so here's my scene. I'm in my dual cinematic view. So let's just open, actually not the main sequence, but I'm really only working on this garden sequence. And I'm just going to highlight this. And so this is a scene that we're going to modify, right? So we're just panning across left to right. And I'm only going to be concerned with what's visible in this. And so let's go ahead and start. First thing I might want to do is deal with the lighting, right? Because right now it's way too bright. I want it to be rainy and I want to control my camera. So I'm going to highlight my camera, and I might start to change some settings. But first of all, the sky is way too bright. And so I want to add my weather so that I'm dealing with actual lighting conditions. And so if I scroll down here, you can see I have my ultra dynamic sky. I can, change the cloud coverage by dragging this and start making it moody and dark. But rather than doing that, what we also get with ultra dynamic sky is another blueprint actor that gives me dynamic weather. So I'm going to drag this into my scene and give it a moment, and it sort of defaults to rain. And ultra dynamic sky, or rather ultra dynamic weather, once it's in place, takes over ultra dynamic sky. So if I want to switch my scene from from rainy to sunny, I can go ahead and do that. So if I go to my ultra dynamic weather, we can start to see, let's zoom out a little bit and just look at my entire scene, right? And so we have ultra dynamic weather. The whole scene is essentially experiencing rain. If I scroll down here, there are some weather presets that I can just switch between to take a look at. I think if I hit G, I'll see the game view. And so in my ultra dynamic weather, where is it? So if I click on this, we can see I can change to clear skies. I can change to cloudy. I can change to foggy, right? So there are just some presets that are provided, which may be all that we really need, right? Overcast. We had partly cloudy. Maybe this is what the default is. But we have light rain. We can do thunderstorm. And you can see there's a lot more wind and turbulence. And so I can go in and change my Quixel trees to blow to match the weather conditions I'm using. There's if I want a dust storm, this would be if I'm trying to recreate Blade Runner 2044, I suppose. But we can start to add a variety of conditions. Here's blizzard conditions. And here is light snow, right? Obviously, this will be more convincing with like actual snow on the surface, but ultra dynamic sky actually does provide us with tools in which to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do not light rain or thunderstorm, but just regular rain. And this will be the rainy condition that I want. And I can go in here and tweak the amount of rain. But I'm going to just go ahead and keep the default, right? I'm going to go back into my courtyard, slow down my camera a little bit, right? And so again, I'm only focused on this view. And you can see that the rain is already interacting with this floor. If I select my floor material without selecting the rain, right? So here's, or rather my floor mesh. This is my new floor mesh, I think. If I right click and browse to asset, yes, this is the floor mesh that I brought over. If I double click on this now, and I look at my collision, I'm going to remove my collision here just so you can see all of the steps. So if I remove my collision and we get close to the floor asset, or if I can manage to grab one of these, let's just highlight the weather. You can see that I'm not getting the splash response. I might be getting the splash response down here, but this is the collision that the rain particles are interacting with. So in order for me to see the rain splashing off of this floor, the first thing I'll need to do is go into the floor and add a collision. And so I'm going to go ahead and just create a box collision. A box collision just puts a sort of a bounding box around the entire thing. But for my purposes, that's perfectly fine. And now ultra dynamic rain, the ultra dynamic rain, I'm just going to say rain for now. The rain is interacting with my collider. So we need to create like a physics asset or create a collision in order to do that. Same thing with this, right? So we do see rain interacting with this. It's because I've added a collider to this mesh. So if I right click, browse to asset, here's that mesh asset. I can double click on it and we can see this is the table that's in my closet. If I go to my collisions and I remove my collision again and hit save, and we can see the rain is just going to go fall directly through the table and interact with the floor underneath, right? So in order to give the rain information to work with, I can just add a box collision. Again, it just creates a bounding box around it. This is the simplest way of making a collider. And I hit save, and we can start to see that my table is starting to deflect the rain. And then down below here, we're not going to see the rain hitting the surface below, right? I'm going to delete the stand-in assets now. And we're just going to go ahead and change things, make things better, right? One thing I didn't like about this scene was just how big um, the field looked. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my weather because it's a little bit distracting. I'm just going to click on this eyedropper or this visibility icon, like a little eyeball. I'm going to close it to not see the rain because it is also going to charge my graphics card a little bit, and I want to not do that. And so I still have my lighting conditions the way it needs to be, and so I don't really need the rain particles anymore. So like I said, I'm gonna hit G so we can start to see what's going on. As I mentioned, we have procedurally placed trees, right? And I have these volumes where the trees are being spawned into my scene, right? So if I were to just grab my volume and bring it forward, right? And with my volume highlighted, I can just go ahead and resimulate, and then I can move my trees forward and see the immediate results in my sequence. Maybe that feels a little bit too close. I'm going to resimulate again, right? I'm starting to see through to the back, which I don't like. So maybe I want a little bit more density in the trees. And so I can go up here and increase and or decrease certain aspects. I don't need to change the height. I'm going to increase the depth of this so that I might have some more trees in the back here. I can resimulate. And so I'm like, just, creating a little bit more mood in the background. This feels like it's a little too close to the picnic blankets. And I'm just going to rotate. Right. And so this is just more of a compositional exercise, and I can resimulate. Right. And maybe this starts to feel pretty good. I can move this one around as well. I can just kind of fill in this area. Maybe I'll bring this forward a little bit and then hit resimulate. I'm not sure that it'll change all that much. Resimulate. Right. I'm not actually sure that that's really changing all that much, but we can see I want to have my camera view just so I know everything that I'm doing is only impacting what's visible, right? Otherwise, there's no point doing it at all. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to add some different trees, right? I wanted some more color, really. So what I might do is find my procedural foliage generator. Let's increase the size of my window here. I think somewhere, right, if I was organized, created some kind of a foliage folder. So here's my foliage folder, and here are my procedural tree and my procedural grass volumes, right? If I double click on this now, all this is doing is it's spawning these foliage types, right? So a black alder tree, a European beech tree, and a common hazel tree. And these are some of the trees that I added earlier on when we were dealing with foliage. I'm going to go here and add a maple tree. And I don't even know if I have the maple tree in my scene. Let's go to the Epic Games launcher. I'm going to go to library. If you go to Fab, you can find this tree. It should be free. It's a Megascans tree. But I already have it downloaded. I'm going to find my Norway maple and I'm going to add this to my project. And so let's scroll down to my project, which is this one, and add it to my project. And let's give that a second to download and import into my project, right? So while we're here, we can talk a little bit about how to create a procedural volume, right? So if we go to where would it be? So we need a procedural foliage spawner. Let's try to find out. I don't remember where that is. Um, why isn't it there? I feel like it should have been there. So let's just type in the search. Procedural. Um, maybe I need to turn something on. Let's go to edit plugins. Procedural. That's here. Procedural. Let's see how far we are in this memory. Override now. Yes. Oh, right. I wonder if it's because I'm in 5.5. Let's take a look at this asset. No, let's see. Using my library. I'm gonna close this, and maybe it's just better if I close the project while I add it. So add project. Here's my philosoph log 4. Yes, please. Okay, now it's done. Um, As to the
Then simply
procedural foliage, if I go to my Moreau folder, we'll be able to see all of the various tutorials that I use to create, um, basically create everything, right? So procedural foliage, I use this tutorial. I can't even remember how I brought in a procedural foliage volume into my scene. So let's go ahead and play this.
Hello and welcome. This video is an
And find out.
introduction to procedural foliage. Using a procedural foliage volume, we can play ahead and do. All right, now we can make our volume with which to spawn the foliage inside of. Right click in the content browser and come here to foliage, and you should see a procedural foliage spawner. I'm going to call this PFS grassland.
So I went precisely there. So I feel like we didn't do something. So enable procedural foliage.
First thing that we want to do is enable it in the editor preferences. Come up to edit, editor preferences. We are going to find this setting under the experimental area.
Okay, so this is what we didn't do. We added our maple tree. Let's go back to our project 5.5. And we just have to enable it in our editor preferences. I'm going to turn off my rain again. Go to edit, editor preferences, procedural foliage. There it is. So we check this box, close it, and now if I right click here, go to my foliage, I have my procedural foliage spawner. So I use the PFS prefix. Right, so let's just create a new one for a moment. If I double click on that, it just gives me a few options: random seed tile size, number of unique tiles. And if I want to start adding my foliage assets, this is where I would do it. And I could just type Norway and pick one of these maple trees, right? Here's my Norway field maple. Remember, field trees are more lush. Forest trees are a little bit skinnier because they're competing with other trees, right? And so now if I drag this, save it. And so now if I drag this into my scene, I want it to interact with my floor. I can go over here, and if I hit simulate, I should be able to just see one tree. Unable to spawn, the volume isn't big enough. So let's go ahead and increase the X and Y with my, right? I'm gonna have to simulate, and so I've got a couple of Norway maples. Wow, these are very tall, right? So I want them to be shorter, so maybe I'm gonna look for some different maple trees. Maybe I'll do this one instead. And then I'm gonna simulate. Oh, these are too wispy and small. These are like baby trees. Let's try 5, save, simulate. Also not what I want. Let's try 3, simulate, right? These are quite tall relative to my other trees. So I'm gonna try to simulate. There they are. And maybe what I'll do is go to my foliage asset now. Oops. Which is this one. If I double click on this, this is not my static mesh, but my static mesh foliage actor. And what this is going to help me control is the various, I can kind of create variability of these meshes within here. I also think this is using the wrong version of that mesh. I want my pivot painter foliage. So let's go back. Remember pivot painter versus the simple wind. The simple wind kind of sways the entire mesh, whereas the pivot painter sways like bits and pieces of it in a more realistic way. And so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my I'm going to go back to my spawner. So let's double click on the maple spawner. I'm going to clear this out just so I know I'm adding the correct maple. I'm going to go to, let's try this field tree. Save, simulate. Yeah, it's huge. I didn't realize these trees were so big. Let's browse to that asset. I'm going to double click on the static mesh foliage actor. Let's take a look at scale. So maybe I'll do 0.35 and 0.5. Oops, 35, 0.5, 0.35, and 0.5. Let me hit save. And then re-simulate. Oh, this is for painting, right? So I changed the scale that I want to use for painting. I think what I need to do is change the procedural element. So let's look at some of these things here. Clustering, average spread, growth, max age, initial age. So procedural scale is actually giving me a range from 1 to 3. So this might actually be 3 times bigger than I want. So let's do 0.5 to 1.2. 1.2. Save. Right. So again, I'm changing the procedural settings here and not the painting settings. The painting settings obviously affect the tree when I go into my foliage mode and paint. But we're using procedural, so I'm going to re-simulate that. So now we're getting the tree that's more appropriate in size, right? So I'm going to close this. Remember, this is my field tree too. So I'm going to close this out. And what I'm going to do instead is add this tree to my other tree spawner so that I can mix some of these trees in and get this nice red color in my background. So let's go to foliage, PFS trees. And I'm just going to add now this Norway maple. Here it is. Pivot painter, and it was Norway Maple Field 2. I'm gonna add that there and hit save. Right. I'm gonna delete this maple spawner because I don't want it in my scene. And I'm only gonna resimulate, right? Because right now it's just giving me whatever it spawned. And so I don't know if I want to resimulate for all of the spawners I have out there. I'm just gonna try this one, right? And again, let's go to my cinematic. Want to open my garden shot, right? Because this is all that I care about is the appearance of some of this color over in this. Now, this tree is like really colliding with my other trees. And so maybe I don't like the way this looks. Exactly, right? My scene is looking a little bit dark. So I want to go ahead and highlight that camera, and I might change some of the settings of this camera. So this is my roof garden camera. I'm gonna go to the post-processing section here. And I might change my exposure from 3 to 4 to just brighten things up a little bit and get a nice view of this, right? So this is getting closer to what I want, but it's a little bit too red. It's a little bit overpowering. So I'm gonna go back to my spawner. Let's keep this open so I can keep editing it. I might switch from the field tree to one of these forest trees. So let's try forest 2 instead. And then I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to make the same adjustments that I did. So I want to change the procedural scale. I'm going to do 0.5 to maximum of 1. And let's see what that does. So go back to our procedural spawner. Let's just dock this up here. I'm gonna select my volume again, and I'm gonna resimulate. Right, that's looking a little bit better. So we got a little bit of red up here. And I'm gonna scan this across just to see what we've got. Right. So as I work, I do have right. So this was a rendered video. Right. So at this point, I could even look at what I already did and just kind of compare that to what I'm seeing here. So I may want to brighten up my scene just a touch. I'm getting close in terms of the framing of my picnic blanket. Right. And I may want to just add a little bit more color to to these particular green trees here. So I wanted the mix between fall colors and some green, but maybe this looks a little bit too green. If I go to my procedural tree spawner. It's going to be hard for me because I wasn't paying attention when I did this to know which tree was what, right? So I'm just going to go one by one. Let's try this common hazel tree. So I'm going to click on this little folder to browse to its asset. I can double click on this to find the actual static mesh. So let's find that. So here's that common hazel static mesh. And if I double click on that, what I want to do is I want to find the material that I'm using. So if I double click on this material, I'm going to pull this out, go to my scene. The Megascans trees provide some control over the effective seasons, right? So I turned off the effective seasons here. And now if I turn it back on, you can see my tree has gone from green to yellow, right? So let's go back to the green. Oops. Turn the seasons back on, and it now updated those trees to yellow. And what I might do here is change this color a bit. Right. And see if I can adjust that. This looks a little fake. Cancel for a moment. Oh, by the way, I mentioned if you wanted to create a winter scene, if you turn on winter, it's going to get rid of all of the leaves in those trees. And so you can see that those trees now have no leaves on them. And so you would do that at the material instance level of that tree. But it's not winter, so I'm going to bring my foliage back. I do want the seasons, but I want this to be a little bit on the greener side. Greenish yellow, if I can try to get to that one. It just has to be over here, something like that. But yeah, you can play around with that and get your settings to the way you want it to appear. I think this is fine for now. If I wanted more Norway maples here, I can resimulate this one as well. So now I've got some red as I pan across, right? I'm not happy with the way this glass is looking, and there's like an old glass in here. So if I want to get a better sense of whether or not I can even see that, I might want to change my glass, right? And so I'm using this dirty glass for the most part. So I'm just going to drag that onto this. I'm going to drag that onto this, drag that onto this, and then go, whoops. I'm going to go inside and drag this onto this glass as well. All of these guys. That. I don't know if these are even going to be visible, but while I'm here, it's easy enough to update. Right? And so I'm going to continue to pan. And yeah, I don't even know if I see any red. Right. And so if I want to create more variation, or try different variations, I can go to my procedural foliage spawner, and I can just change this random seed number. So from 75 to 76, it's going to give me version 76 of the however many million that it calculates, right? So if I like this one, I'm going to leave this one alone, and I'm only going to resimulate on this guy. Let's resimulate. And we can see now we have a little bit more red here. So as we pan, I'm going to increase my camera's exposure. Where's my roof garden? Let's see, plus 6 for the time being. I don't know if this feels a little bit bright. 5.5. And as I pan, now I can just try to look through that window. Still not seeing enough red. I might want like a little splash of red there. So let's go back. Change the seed again. Hit save. Select this. And we simulate. And see if I get some more red. Simulate. Just gonna check for a moment. Yeah, so that is definitely something I'm in control here. I'm going to take this a bit and simulate. And maybe this is fine. We've got some red. Okay. The grass runs underneath the trees, which is not what we would naturally see. So this is going back to week 1. All right, I'm gonna go to my location here. I'm going to paint this using my landscape painter. So landscape mode, paint. And I have some dirt layers on this. What layer is this? I also have this layer. Um, this is my gravel. This is some kind of a dirt layer. So let's give this a try. I'm going to reduce my fall off a bit. And I'm just going to start painting out here. Maybe I'll paint on the side so I can get some. I don't think I need to paint that far out. Right, something like that. Maybe I'll paint with this layer and just kind of like overlay. I'm just going to increase the brightness of my screen here so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So it seems like when I paint with this layer, I'm actually painting grass again. Let's go back to layer B. The fall off is like feather. And I feel like it's working, it's just not keeping up. I'm basically just trying to cover areas that would be below the tree canopy. Okay. Let's just go back to our selection mode. I'm going to hit undo. Acting speech. All right. This landscape tile isn't quite clear. So let's just try to undo everything. Undo. Landscape. I'm just gonna keep undoing this landscape. Yeah, I'm gonna try it again. So there's something not right about this. So let's just all right, this tile is a little screwy here. Let's try going forward. So I'm gonna save this map at this point. So this is closer to what I want my landscape to look like, but let's now try to adjust the painting a little bit more. So I'm gonna go back to my bottom material, see if it's, yeah, painting the grass again. Now I'm gonna go back to this D. I want my fall off bigger. Drag across. Not trying to have as harsh, something like that. That looks a little bit better. And if I hold shift in paint, I can add some green back. You can see how that's looking there. The shift is essentially erasing some of that, right? So I'm okay with that. Let's go back to my selection mode. Actually, I want to paint a little bit more dirt. Okay. Oh, right. So I can put some kind of an asset. Go back to my selection mode. So in Fab, we can look for some 3D nature and plants. Debris, forest. Let's look for that. Let's look for Quixel. I know Quixel has a bunch of these scenes, perceptually here. The Fab interface is not. It's really hard here. Let's see if we can just type Megascans. Right. I mean, I have a lot of these assets in Bridge. And so it's just easier to access it from here, but I want to show you how to do it from Fab because you won't be able to access it in the same way. So let me at least find the name of that asset. Let's do stuff. Right? Like it's these types of assets that I'm looking for. And then branch, like these types of assets, right? Um, let's try to find these in Fab. Here. Right. So in all products, typing dead branch will help you maybe better find some of these Quixel assets, right? Hopefully you'll be able to find some that are free. Let's check the box and see that. Right, and so you can kind of download and look for the assets that are appropriate for your scene, right? I downloaded some already. Let's move this up. I believe it's in here. This large fallen tree branch, right? Looks something like that. Back here, right? All this is doing is just giving it a little bit, like breaking up the fakeness of some of this. And then there's this uprooted Nordic forest tree. This. And I certainly could add more if I wanted to. I don't know if I have these accessible to me. Let's just go to the fab. Um, let's just add the project medium quality. Perfectly fine. A broken tree branch. Here's my broken tree branch. Drag this over. Oh, it's tiny. Bigger. Now it's more of a log. Right, if I hit end, it'll snap to the next collider, which is my landscape. I'm going to rotate this. All right, something like that. Right, just to give it a little bit more interest. My picnic blanket at this point is a little bit too close to the edge. I don't think anyone would want to sit there for picnic, but at the same time, I want to make sure I'm like following the rule of thirds. I don't know if you know what the rule of thirds is, but it doesn't have to be perfect, but something like that. So it's also a little bit bigger in my view as well. Yeah. So I think our lighting is about right. If I want to just double check with my rain. Oh, I've got this horrible fog in my rain. That's really, I don't know. It looks very fake to me. And it's really distracting. I want to turn that off. How do I turn that off? Let's go into ultra dynamic weather. I'm just going to scroll and look for fog. Is it dust particles? I don't want dust particles. Right, and you can see there's just a ton of adjustments that you can make. And so it's a very robust asset, but really quite overwhelming sometimes. Okay, post-process wind fog. Let's see if I can, yeah, there we go. So I just want to get rid of the fog. I don't need fog in my scene, right? I want it to look like this. Okay, so lighting wise, this is getting close. I'll have to keep tweaking that as I go. But at least this left side of my scene is looking close to what I wanted. And so, yeah, just adjusting the procedural trees or the procedural foliage actor a little bit to introduce the red. I adjusted the color of my hazel trees. So now I've got like sort of this pale yellow, this deeper yellow, and this red, just to get like the fall colors that I'm interested in. Okay. And so this is what we have so far. Okay. Let's turn off the rain again. And let's work on some of these other fixes. Back to the house. Some people don't like convergence, the vertical convergence that occurs when you tilt a camera. So I'm going to take this camera. Right now it's rotating based on its world position. So I'm going to switch this to the local rotation. So now I can rotate my camera in its X, Y, and Z. I'm going to set the Y rotation to 0, right? So now my vertical elements are all vertical, right? This is what a lot of like architectural photographers would use or would do, right? This is why they use tilt shift lenses for tall buildings, right? So in order to keep things that are vertically aligned more vertical in the composition, you would have to keep your camera, right? This is a little bit off. I think it's because it's reloaded that. Right. I'm not a big stickler for that. I think it looks very unnatural when you try to keep everything vertical. But it's totally up to you, right? And so you can position your camera in whatever way you think is going to be most appropriate. I care more about the composition of the scene, the overall composition of the scene. I also think here, I would want to show, if I could, some of the stuff going on up above. Some of this stuff. Let's go back to this view. And set that 1, 2, right? Making some of this stuff visible might be worthwhile just because it is there. It is more information you can add. And so I could do that by changing I can make this a wider angle, right? I hate wide angle, but you can see I can add a lot more. Wide angle is very commonly used in architectural photography, and you can start to see that there's a little bit more red. So this might be okay too. It doesn't like offend me so much. But I might just make a real number out of this, like an 18mm lens is an actual lens. So I might prefer to do that. So here's my lens. We get a little bit more of the foreground. We get a little bit more of this stuff up above. But this just means we have a little bit more work to do as well. So just keep that in mind. Right. And it also makes everything here smaller. Right. So we were at 22. If we want to go the other way, we can just cut that off completely. And we get a little bit. But this way, it doesn't seem like we're missing anything. Right. So these are compositional questions. This is totally subjective. This is based on, the narrative, what you want to highlight, what you want to show, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do 18. and make life a little more difficult for myself. And I might add a little bit of foliage and gunk up here to just to um, just to add to the real. What I do like about this shot is now I get to see some of the red of the trees beyond. Okay. Okay. So let's look at a couple of the textures that I wanted to use. So this table, I obviously want a nicer material for. I did find a Megascans surface. I wonder if it's this blood concrete. No. I'll go directly into the Megascans folder. So I have two Megascans folder. It's the stuff that comes in through Fab is in the Fab folder. The stuff that comes in through Bridge is in the Megascans folder. More likely than not, you're going to be only using Fab assets. And so you'll only have the Fab folder. Everything should be in there, but I have to look in three different places. And if you're using this project as an example project, you're going to have to look at both of these places. So what I did was I grabbed a concrete slab material. If I double click on this, you can see I've reduced the tiling quite a bit, but I'm gonna restore this to the default. Which shouldn't be 0, it should be 1. Right. So this is the actually this is not the concrete material, but let's leave that one there. I used smooth concrete. Is that right? That's all mess up. Right, so we can see our tiling is at 0.02 roughly. I'm just gonna put 1 and 1, just so we can see. Yeah, I think this is like a smooth concrete material. Rotation all 0, right? And so this is the material I found for this table. So I'm gonna apply this to my. Right, when I apply it to my table, we can see the reason I changed the tiling was because this the UV map on this asset, in fact, on a lot of the assets that I got from the Villa Savoye model, were tiled in this way. And so basically what I needed to do is go in here and adjust that tiling. And I found that 0.02 by 0.02 gave me the appropriate amount of tiling where I'm not seeing all of those seams and repetition, right? So that was for the table. You know, a couple of things I adjusted was I really disliked the appearance of this pink. But let's, you know, not make any guesses here. Let's go to pure ref. I'm going to open my Villa Savoye board, right? It is a pink color. Let's see if I have some better. Yeah, here we go. So it is pink. I mean, the person who modeled the project did a fairly good job. Maybe this is okay. All right. Okay. Oops. The floor looks horrible. I'm gonna want to change this. I found this marble tiles material. If I double click on this, this is the one I used. Let's apply this. I think it is the one I. And here, I'm not even seeing the tile lines. I just kind of got rid of it. But it does have a little bit of noise in the texture in the material. You can see that there are some tile lines here, but it's really not super visible. And there's like this sort of dull sheen on the interior. And so I'm really trying to match that. So that is a good substitute for it. This hearth, I could raise this up even higher. I think I could just apply a concrete material to concrete slab. I think this is probably going to tile in a way that's unsatisfactory as well. Yeah, you see how tiled that is. But I think this concrete slab material, I really wanted to apply here. So let's work on this material here. And since that slab is not so visible, we're really going to focus on the outside planter. So 0.004 is after some experimentation, what I came up with to get this material looking better. And we can see there's a little bit of a seam line here, which I think is okay. But I might want to, oops. I might want to adjust that visually to align better. So if I offset my Y, you can see I can move that. I can move that down. It's really hard to control at these numbers just because this material is so tiled. So let's try minus 0.04. And that puts this little cracked line. Let's do 0.03. Right, kind of where we want it. And now if we zoom in, our hearth looks fine. We're not going to be able to see much of it. And then I hated this brick material. So what I did was, I think I just took the brick from the easy mapper demo material. I think it might be this thing. Yeah. And then I just adjusted its tiling as well. So I made that material C, and I just changed the global scale of the material, right? So if we pull this out, so we can visually see what sliding this around does. Yeah. Right. So remember, the C is the top layer. I'm not even using this with the intent of adding any layer blending to it or vertex blending, but you can see I can start to change the overall scale of my brick. So maybe that looks a little bit more realistic. Hit save and close. And if I wanted to, I can make this the B material and use some kind of a black city material and paint black soot and gunk onto the walls of my, the inner walls of my firebox. But again, from where it's positioned in my composition, it's not really going to be visible. And so that's really all I need. I don't think I need to do anything more to this. I probably didn't even need to update the material, right? So let's go and do some vertex painting on this. I'm going to want to change my I'm going to want to use that concrete tile. And so in class, I went through that process. I think I downloaded some textures, like I said. Here's a concrete tile. I think this one didn't have a height map. You could use and try to use a bump map or a cavity map to simulate or replace the height map. You could even try using the ambient occlusion, which kind of aligns to creates contrast at the seams. But I think I ended up using this thing instead, right? And so let's find where I made that material. I think it's in this folder. I've got garden Garden 2, and Garden 3. I think what I ended up doing with Garden 3 is I added, let's just turn off the puddle layer for now. I added 3 layers to this. The gravel layer should really be my A layer, but I ended up adding this in the end, so it's at the C layer. This is the same gravel that I used in my driveway in the landscape. Material B is my moss layer, so I've got the moss textures, the albedo, the metallic, the normal. I don't have an ARD map on this, so I uncheck this box so that I can apply my ambient occlusion, my displacement, and roughness separately. And my A layer would be my concrete tile, so albedo, ambient occlusion, displacement, and normal. And these, again, I just downloaded from the Quixel Megascans options. I'll make these available. I'll make these textures available to you as well. You just want to find something that has a displacement now. This is what the Vertex painting and the really the first Vertex painting and blending based on the relative heights of these vertices really is going to rely on the displacement map. So make sure that your materials have this displacement map, right? So I'm going to apply my version 3 garden material to my my mesh. And we can see, I think it already has some, this has some blending going on, but I'm going to just redo it because it doesn't really look that good anyway. I could also rework this, right? So I want my tile to start, oh, I already did adjust it. I want my tile to start right at this end. And here I care a little bit less because if we look at our reference images, we can see there's some sort of a drainage channel here. We can see that a little bit better, I think, on one of these images. You can see some grading here, a couple of pieces of concrete here. Right, but you know, this is a good image to start to replicate all the kind of gunky dirtiness of that upper layer, in addition to some of the green that's going on in between our tile, right? And so at this point, I'm gonna switch my layout to be single pane and just start focusing on Vertex painting, right? I might brighten up my report a little bit so I can see a little bit better. So I'm going to highlight my floor mesh. If you recall, we need to vertex paint in modeling mode. So I'm going to go to modeling. We go to attributes, and here we can paint vertex colors. So I'm going to highlight that. So right now, everything is black. Actually, let's just make sure, and we just hit the fill black button. Black. We want to paint with white, and we want to erase with black. Okay. And we're going to start with our red channel, which is material B. G is material C. And B is actually the puddle layer, and we'll work on that as well because we are doing a rainy scene, and so we're going to want that puddle layer activated, right? So here's my R. We don't want to paint like this because we actually can't see what we're painting. So in our visualization, we're going to change our material mode to original material, right? And then I'm going to adjust my brush settings. I'm really going to reduce the size of my brush. Get close to the rough dimensions. Slow down the camera a bit. Right. And then I can start painting my green. And the results of your painting here is really going to depend on how many vertices you have in that mesh and how well those vertices actually align to your displacement map, right? So if your displacement map is actually not aligning to your vertices, you might have a harder time with this process. And so you can, fix it in a couple of different ways. One is you could just go back to your mesh modeler, and I think in Rhino you can intensify your mesh, right? Because every so often, like you can see there, I had a big effect happening with my painting because maybe more vertices align with this particular scene. And in some cases, that doesn't happen, right? And so, yeah, it's a little bit of trial and error. And so, yeah, we're not striving for perfection. We just want it to look convincing. And I'm going to keep painting this. Basically just painting all of the scenes. And again, only where it's visible. I don't want to paint. Right. Also, you have to kind of put on your, I don't know, gardener's hat a little bit. I don't know what you would call it, but sort of keep in mind like where would there be grass and where wouldn't there be grass, right? What's going to prevent grass or be conducive to this type of grass or moss growing, right? Moss likes shady surfaces, damp surfaces, right? And so I guess it depends on if it's moss or grass, and maybe you sort of treat them in the same way. There's also the effects of a human being walking along and using these surfaces, right? And so higher traffic areas are going to be less likely to have this type of moss growing. And so you're going to want to add and um, erase according to some of this reality, right? I'm just going to keep going a bit. We're done. So if, at this point, if there's something that you feel like is a mistake, you can always hit shift and erase, right? So when I hit shift, I'm going into the erase color, which is black, and I'm painting in white. So you can just kind of get a better sense of what's going on. Is it's the same thing we're doing with the maps, right? The maps are all just black and white images that are being used to mask and filter like some of the effects, right? And like, so, right? And when we're done, you can hit the accept. Remember, you have to hit the accept button in order for this to, right? And if we zoom into our mesh, and you can see how the bump map is sort of raising the areas where the grass is, right? If you get up close, it totally does not look realistic. but from a distance, maybe it looks okay, right? And then you can double click on your material instance, right? Let's make this a little bit bigger. And we can start tweaking the A/B blend control, right? So I can increase the effect of my grass. So this is probably maybe adhering more to what I painted, and then it's kind of filling in more based on the filling in the B layer more based on its height map or displacement map. And if I bring this down, I can start to make it much more subtle. It's strange how it kind of figures. If I go all the way, I think what it does is it makes it look like the moss is growing in the higher parts of the displacement map of A. So I want to find a sweet spot where I have enough that it doesn't look like overkill. Right? So this starts to look a little bit like what it's me. Right. And if it starts to feel a little off, what you can do is go back and keep painting, except this time I'm going to strategically erase. So hold down Shift. So try again, subtlety. Right, looks a little bit off. Here, I'm not so concerned because I'm going to put that rate, right? This is where the wish list is good because now I know I don't have to work on that part of it. Here, it might be okay because like this is not going to be a heavily trafficked area. Same there. Here. Right, and then if I want to, I can reduce the flow action of the face. Here, I'm just kind of clicking the erase, right? I think if my mesh were denser, I'd have much better results, but right, I do want some kind of like denser green areas because there are going to be areas where I'm going to add some foliage. So like there's so much green that little weeds sprouted up. I'm not even sure if this is ever going to be visible. That, wood. Anything grow underneath this table? Who knows? Fence. Right, so people are going to be walking primarily here, so I'm going to try to lighten. Let's put this. I don't think. that. Right. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna hit again accept. If you don't hit this accept button, everything you just did is lost. So make sure you're paying attention to that. I'm gonna go back to my selection mode. I'm just gonna take a look at what my cinematic is looking. So with my sequencer, right? So this is what matters, right? So as I do this and pan across, I might start to say, maybe this looks a little bit too dense. So I'm gonna highlight my mesh, go back into my modeling, attributes, read Vertex colors, and I might start right. Try to be a little bit more subtle. I don't know, maybe that looks okay. Right. So the other thing I did was I found some other assets. Oh wait, did I hit accept? I think I did hit accept. And go back to selection mode. Go back to the content browser. I found some other assets to use, also 3D assets from Megascans. I think they're from Megascans. Fab, 3D, cement curve, and middle grain cover. So I'm going to go into my metal grain cover. Oops. Right. So I'm going to rotate this by 90. It's quite small. So I might scale it up a touch. I'm going to scale this way so that it is a little bit more visible. Right. I also downloaded this cement curb. I don't know. Right. I'm just going to use this again, rotate 90. And then scale. Right. And then move this. Move it to here. And move this. And there. One. And then I'm going to hit Alt and drag. All right. I could do this in the 3D model, but these are already textured materials or textured assets, so it's way easier to just kit bash. So I'm going to select my mesh again, and now I know where my grade is. I'm going to go ahead and put a gravel layer in here. I'm going to go to my modeling mode. I'm going to attributes, Vertex paint, right? This time I want my material C. So this is material B, this is material C, right? You can kind of see what that's gonna look like. There's some gravel. All right, I'm gonna increase the flow here. And I just want this to be under my grading, just in case. It's probably won't be visible, but just in case. I might do some fall off. Don't need feathering here. Right, this might be if like I created another shot where right. And I'm gonna stop once I get to this matter. Right. Hit accept. I'm going to go back to selection mode. Let me just scale this up. So Alt and drag. Alt and drag. Grab my grate. Alt and drag. Alt and drag. And one more. Right. These look a little high to me. I'm going to select. Right, again, I'm looking at how visible they are over here. I don't like how visible they are over here. Right, I think I've got all of them. Touch. No, I'm going to lower these. Right, they just need to be above my config tile. Right, something like that. Right, so, have at it. Right, this is all subjective. I'm painting grass. I'm going to place now some dirt, that type of thing. I think this table needs to be lower. So we can see what's happening in our scene. Okay. All right, what's next? Let's add some decals to dirty up our stucco. I had a window color. So, I use this color for my front window, so I'm just going to apply this. This is just a diffuse material color. So I actually would probably want to do a little bit of work on this just to make it look more realistic. But I can start applying this to the inside meshes as well. I didn't want the including stuff. Right. So I didn't like the appearance of the white window frames, the rendering that I did. So I'm going to go ahead and make it less distracting. Oh, look at this tree is growing inside of my. Wait a minute. Why is it so close? I see. That's a shame. So I'm going to take this just in case it's visible. I hate to just in case it's visible, I would hate for it to appear in my cinematic. I'm just going to move this tree down. Let's make sure. All right, this is looking much better than before, but still looks good. So a big part of making something look real, believe it or not, is making it look shitty. Let's make this shitty, ironically. I only included or added a few different decal materials. Let's don't forget to save. Let's start grabbing some decals. I think we go to the Megascans here, decals. Yeah, we've got some leakage and some rust. Right, so I think I'm mainly using this. So going back, I want to go to VFX decal actor. Right, and then I just set this to be 25, 525, 525. I think the decal is always going to apply in the X axis. And so I'm going to take this leakage let's rotate it. I'm going to snap rotate. That's what I want to do. Which side's for this? This. Grab this one over. I'm going to rotate this one. Right, so here you have to look at reference images because you could definitely overdo it with decal. You don't want to do that. Let's move this down. Remember, if we don't want this floor to accept decal, I can turn that off, but I actually do want it to accept decal. So what I'm going to do instead is reduce, well, I want to increase this. Yes, I can definitely quite just want to just barely, so I can get low without. So now I want to stretch this out all the way across. Alt drag And let's see what this other decal looks like on this. It's kind of dirty decal. It's a little too stretched out. And this out. Lower this a little. Up out here. Do something like that. It's long. Let's see if I have some fab decal photos here. It's okay. So I think I literally just use these three decals. And probably need this one. Oops. Let's see how far we can get with just basically one decal. I think Alt and drag to duplicate. Alt and drag, duplicate. Right. If I double click on this, right, I can change the opacity, reduce that, just be more subtle. Right. Let's go back to our reference image, right? It's really dark over here and much more subtle. Right. So I could do that in a couple of ways. I can create a duplicate of this. The dark. Highlight this decal. That here. Open this one. Keep this that one. Darker still. Oh, right. Let's just stay. Let's just keep that one. Say close. I'm going to return this to 1. I'm going to duplicate this one as well. This color. 5 for now. And I'm going to apply this. No. Too subtle. Let's back up. This is not, I applied the wrong one. Let's see. Right, there we go. That I can just invert the appearance of that decal. And you can also let them overlap one another as well. Right? It's looking quite dark here, so we'll have to refine what these end up looking like. And then this is the scene, or this is part of the scene where it's going to be most visible. So you'll want to give out. Right. It's just a little bit of grunge. There's also run. One degrees. Here, I'm gonna show this. Degrees. I'm just creating variation. I'm not, there's no rhyme or reason to this exactly. Um, right, that. Out. And sometimes with decals, if you get really close to just, there's like a fall off effect. I can start to make it a little bit more subtle, but you get the idea. Um, right. This is looking a little dark. Let's keep this. This one. 0.75, 65, 7. Right. you basically want to not notice it's there. And there's this guy. Rotate it 180. And then bring this guy down here. Subtle. It might be okay. If I change this to this one. Leakage would be stop them. I'm gonna browse to this. It's this asset. I'm gonna just duplicate it and call it light. I'm gonna apply it to this decal after, and to this decal after. Open it up. Set this right. So again, just very subtle. Duplicate that. Bring it down here as well, if I wanted to do that. Right, but what I might do is rotate this now 180 degrees, something like that. Just so that there isn't you can see it's created a bit of a line here, so I might want to adjust that. I'm going to delete it. I don't think I need it. Okay. Let's try this one. So I'll drag, rotate this 90. Here. Increase the height. I'll drag. Copy. right? I just don't want this overlap very visible. I'm just gonna. Oh, that. Um, I could add a little bit of grunge to this. Let's see if I find a reference image. Right, we can see how dirty this outer edge is, and it's clean up here, it's dirty down here. There's a lot of splatter from below. You just get a clue as to like how to like more effectively um, make something look. But so duplicate this. If I hold Shift, I can drag this up. Add some grunge here. If I wanted to, I can just make this darker leakage. I see if I have any images of the underside. There's some dirt there and there. Okay. Here, I wonder if I want to use this Alt and drag. Um, let's reduce the width. Reduce the height. Increase that. I might rotate this. Things up. Top edge there. I actually want to reduce this height right there. Actually, maybe I like that. Alt and drag. Rotate this 180 degrees. Here. This time. But you get the idea, right? I can do a lot more, but I kind of don't want to. Okay, let's do this. No. Yes. Right. I'm just trying to get it to barely overlap. So we get a little, just a touch of grittiness. And because I'm not going to see much of that at all. Right. Freeze. Let's go up. Something like that. Okay. So again, subtlety. You want these things to not stick out or be noticeable or draw attention to itself, right? So like this decal is drawing attention to itself. So and see if I can adjust this in a way that it feels. Okay. Um, I really like seeing this lichen growing on these surfaces. So all I did was I went to Google. I tried that at first. Nothing really came up. And I just wanted to find images of lichen. And so let's see, lichen. I'm not sure what search I used, but I ended up finding this again. Um, I ended up finding a pretty good search. Let's go here. I'll show you the image that I found. Um, I wish I had the original image. Or like in, it could be something like this. Um, could be something like this. Alright, well, this one's got a watermark on it. Um, I can decal it. Ah, let's try scum. The watermark. Well, this one might work. I'm going to save this image. Here's our rock texture. Um, this is the one I made in Photoshop. I'll just show you. Okay. No, pink bucket is white, so you can see what the right. So you can see what the texture looked like. Right. It wasn't even like super high res. Um, all I did was I brought in my texture and just kind of tried to mask out the gray. So select color range. Let's get black. So. First thing, let's move this in the background. Enough light coming in. And there's quite a bit more dark bits. So I'm just going to do it piecemeal. Gray parts. Then hit delete. Right. So now I have like a lighting pattern. I can use my erase tool. Increase the size of this brush. I could feather it. Oops, that was, oh. Oh, that's all right. So I might just erase these hard edges. Right. And then save this as a PNG file, preserve the opacity. Right. Like it. If we go back into our little Savoye project, I have a textures folder. Where would it be? Maybe it's under my architecture. Would it be in here? So many textures folder. Entourage? Maybe it's under materials. So again, this is where I really was strongly recommending that you keep real good track of where your assets are, because I've got so many things in here at this point, so many folders called texture that I have no idea where I save my lichen. Is it in here? Right. You can always search. There it is. And it's in a horrible place called Decals, Concrete Damage, Medium. So that is in Skin. Fab. Decals. There we go. It's out. And so I saved it here, which was not the best place. I'm going to create a new folder here and call this lichen. I'm just going to grab these two. And then move this location. Right. This material, I mean, the reason it's here is because I just duplicated this decal material for Megascans. Right. So now I've got my lichen material. And all I did was I changed the base color texture with this texture that I downloaded. And then I adjusted the brightness because I think it was appearing too bright. So I'm going to right click, duplicate this material, and call it lichen 2. I'm going to take that texture that I just created, drag it in here. And that doesn't, well, maybe it isn't. And then I'm going to drag this onto my lichen 2, right? So you can sort of see the preview of that, right? And then I can grab any decal actor. I'm just going to drag it, alt drag, copy. We might change the aspect ratio a bit, make it a little bit bigger. And then I could apply my texture to it. And I'm going to increase its dimensions. And you can start to see what it's doing. Right, so this is my lichen 2, which maybe I like better than my lichen 1. Who knows? I might want to actually increase size, go bigger this way and bigger this way. Right, and then really check the and we really just want to see this against our actual surface. So now I'm going to use the new lichen texture that I created because I like it. In spite of how little I did to it, it actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to tweak the settings a bit. I feel like the brightness is a bit off. Keyboard is a little locked up at the moment.